before. Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below. Let's get to 100 so we can turn on the face cam and get going. Also, make sure that if you guys are new and watching this, make sure you're subscribed. If you are subscribed, make sure that you have the notifications on so you never miss another video or stream that we do. But nevertheless, it's been a good week. We've had a lot to, I guess, cover, and we've been talking a lot about Elon Musk and the USAID drama because the left just completely is melting down over common sense and what they're exposing within these departments, and they're barely getting started. They're still going on. It's also the Gulf of America now, not the Gulf of Mexico on Apple Maps and Google Maps, meaning that Donald Trump, once again, he just said one day we're going to rename it. He did something. He got it done. And now look at it. It's literally on the maps. It's not the Gulf of Mexico anymore. It's the Gulf of America, which honestly makes sense, at least for our own borders, because that part of the Gulf is the Gulf of our country. You have Florida, you have Texas, a lot of the memorable coastline that we have, a part of this country. Obviously, it's not in Mexico, it's in the United States. You have that happen, and you have Democrats already making mistakes for 2026, and we're going to be covering all three of these things tonight. So make sure you guys hit that like button down below. We're 8 away. We got to get going. And also, guys, keep in mind to do an extra stream this week. We will have to hit our goal of 20 yellow super chats and above. We already have 4 of them. If you guys would like to send a super chat to add to that goal, we're going to get to them after the main segment as we usually do. So we have 100 likes and we are officially ready to go because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are going out there and they're actually doing what they promised, which is not something that a lot of politicians and a lot of people in our political class are really used to. And when this sort of thing is happening, you're seeing a lot of mental breakdowns because usually doing these things, what it really encompasses is uncovering a lot of the stuff that's been going on for years behind the scenes in our bureaucracy, within our government, within the deep state. And Donald Trump, on the campaign trail, he campaigned with Elon Musk. He said Elon Musk is going to be in charge of auditing the government. He's going to be in charge of the whole debt thing. That's what Donald Trump was saying because he knew that Elon's a very smart guy and he'd have a very smart team around him of people that would go identify wasteful spending, identify basically fraud and money laundering within our government, of which we've seen quite a bit of it, apparent money laundering, a lot of this wasteful spending into these very far left causes within our government. It is not just, a drop in the bucket. It really adds up within that department. And that's one department that's 1% of our entire GDP that needs to be severely gutted, if not just completely removed. And because of this, Donald Trump already has fired a bunch of people at USAID, and they're going to do this to every single department. I mean, this is a fast-paced thing. It's going to be going on for 4 years. You're seeing it potentially with the Department of Education. The left is melting down. They're running with this narrative that if there's no Department of Education, we won't have schools, which is just not true. It's laughable. The National Department of Education was first established in the 1970s under the Carter administration. This is not some phenomenon where, if we don't have this department, you're not going to have schools. It's like, first of all, there's some funding, federal funding that flows through there, a lot of which, again, a lot of corruption within that too. Why not just have the Treasury take care of things like student loans? Common Core doesn't work. It's not working. It hasn't improved our standards whatsoever. In fact, we were #1 in the world in education before we had the Department of Education. I'm not saying that we would be number one again if we got rid of the Department of Education, but clearly it's not helping us, and in many cases it will be hurting us. And when you identify this fraud and waste within every single department, you're going to see that more and more, where there's all sorts of shenanigans that are taking place within that department, within plenty of other departments as well. And you have a president who is willing to take a wrecking ball to the regime in a way he didn't even do the first term, and partially because he has Elon Musk with him, and it's really just causing the left to have a collective meltdown. You have people saying, oh, nobody elected this guy. It's like, well, people did. They voted for Trump in part for that reason. Musk definitely helped Donald Trump get elected, not just with his money, but his influence. His purchase of Twitter changed it to X, and definitely Donald Trump is somebody who campaigned with Musk on putting him in this role. And they're whining. They're saying, no, he needs to be impeached because he's usurped the powers of the presidency. It's ironic, though. It's very ironic because you have unelected bureaucrats that are taking advantage of government spending, taking advantage of our government, weaponizing it in many cases against its political opponents. And we've seen that. We've seen it with Trump, and the backlash to that helped play a role in electing Trump for sure this time around. And it's just like they want to impeach Elon because Elon Musk is calling them out. Elon Musk is actually going out there and doing something about this. That's why they're trying to impeach. They don't want to impeach the people that have been involved in basically this money laundering scheme, involved in this wasteful spending, involved in spending millions of dollars on transgender stuff in South America. That's where the taxpayer dollars are going. There's no words of impeachment for these people. In a normal world, there would be. They would just be fired, and they are being fired because we are returning to a normal, serious country somewhat. Long way to go, but for sure, we're moving the ball in the right direction, and that's not going to be without hiccups and without a bunch of people throwing a temper tantrum. We saw it in term one. But now the entire culture has changed to the point where these people just look ridiculous. And this is the way the left is going. They don't have an agenda. They don't have anything to bring to the table, clearly. So what they're trying to do is obstruct everything Trump does. The only problem for them is this isn't first-term Trump where he's underwater approval. He has the opposite thing going. He's above water by 5-10 points. You didn't see that during his first term, but you see it during his second term. And part of the reason why is because his agenda, especially over the last 4 years, when you've seen what the other side has done, it's gotten a hell of a lot more popular than his agenda was back in 2017, for example, when he first took power, which it still was more popular than a lot of people gave him credit for, but still a lot of Republicans at the time in Congress, they had a different agenda that kind of overshadowed a lot of things, and Trump had to work with that, and that agenda was not popular. But this agenda is popular. Trump is going out there just doing things. You have courts that are trying to block what's happening, and Trump just doesn't want to abide by them. And honestly, if you appealed it up to the Supreme Court, Trump would win, to be honest. So what's really the point? They're just trying to waste time. They're trying to buy themselves some time so they can, evade all of this accountability, because that's really what actually cared about, cutting government spending, cutting waste, ending departments that don't need to be ended. Well, then obviously they would be singing a different tone. They'd be better off cheering on Elon Musk. They'd be better off joining him. But because they oppose it, because this is how a lot of people make money, you have unhinged reactions. You have Democrats talking about impeaching. You can't impeach Elon Musk. He's not an elected official. He's working alongside elected officials, but he's not usurping the powers of the presidency because he's conducting an audit that has basically been something that's been called to do by the president and supported by the president's voters. They use words like democracy, threat to democracy, they say. But in reality, it's just a threat to their regime, a threat to their uniparty, a threat to their oligarchy, a threat to the deep state, basically. And that's being uncovered in real time. And that's exactly what it is. They don't care about the will of the people. That's why you have so many people who were unwilling to support RFK Jr., despite the fact that Trump campaigned on putting him in a cabinet post. He campaigned with Tulsi Gabbard on the campaign trail. They're still trying to put out all the stops on confirming her, despite the fact that this is what the American people wanted. It's exactly what the American people voted for. Very telling how these people do that, because it just shows that they have an agenda. They're pushing their own agenda. It's not about some cling to principle. They have no principles whatsoever. They don't. They say Elon Musk is bad because he's a billionaire in politics, and then they ignore the fact conveniently that most people in the billionaire class are actually Democrats, not Republicans. Didn't always used to be that way, but it is that way now. So you look at this, they're unhinged, they're losing their mind. The Democrats are collapsing. They have no agenda, and they also don't really have very strong candidates as well to run this election cycle in 2026 in terms of the midterms. They want to stop Donald Trump's agenda. But if Trump's agenda is popular, then what's the guarantee they're even going to go out there and win in the midterms? Obviously, you could say that the party out of power usually does better in midterm elections, and there is a lot of truth to that. And also, there is a lot of truth to the fact that Republicans in off-year elections, special elections, midterm elections, they haven't been doing as well because a lot of those low-propensity voters, even if they like Trump, they don't like the Republican brand, or they just don't show up for those kinds of elections. So they have to work on that and get people out to the polls in 2026. There's no doubt about it. But the Democrats, on the other hand, they're dropping the ball. They're making things much, much easier for the Republicans than they really even need to be. And you're seeing this in a place like Michigan. Michigan, in terms of the Senate race, Gary Peters, probably if he would have ran for re-election, he probably would have won by, over 5 points. Had the Democrats recruited Mike Duggan to run for the governorship instead of having him run as an independent, who is polling in a way where he likely is going to stay as an independent because he was within striking distance despite being in third. It's like, they could have had it very well for them in Michigan, because the Michigan Democrats, they've been a party that's been competent. They cracked the state legislature for the first time in decades in terms of having a trifecta, having both chambers, even though I think they lost one of those in 2024. But still, now the Senate race there, it seems like the front runner is Pete Buttigieg, who is not from Michigan. He was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He ran for president, and he did well in some of the early states before completely falling on his face when he actually had to face the type of Democrat voters you'd see in a place like Michigan. For example, a lot of white working class Democrats, union Dems, those type of people, a lot of them leaving the party, but also black voters and other minorities didn't do so well with those people, especially among Muslims, by the way. I mean, the guy is gay. That is something that is a serious problem for Muslim voters, whether people are willing to admit it or say it or not. And it's not playing too well in the whole black community either. From what we saw in the primaries in South Carolina, you saw them all kind of coalesce behind Biden for that reason. And we saw it there. And he was a part of that because he's a shill, part of the establishment, but not popular. But he's losing a hypothetical Senate poll to Mike Rogers in the state by 6. I don't know if Mike Rogers is going to be the nominee. He possibly could be. He is somewhat weak overall, but can he beat somebody like a Pete Buttigieg? Probably, because Buttigieg is that weak. He's very smarmy. He was an awful transportation secretary. You're seeing the mess that he's left within the next couple weeks. You're still trying to clean it up, but the whole East Palestine, all the train derailments you saw, all of the DEI regulations that he oversaw that caused them to weaken the talent pool for a lot of these jobs. He was an awful Secretary of Transportation. And everybody knows it. Nobody likes the guy except liberal elitists, which might be enough to put him at the top of the ticket because he can say, hey, I can win. It's a midterm year. Well, if they want to get cocky about that, then that's fine. But there's a very good chance that Republicans in Michigan, despite it not being a state with a strong Republican Party, it's possible they're turning a corner. And if you look at 2026, you have a governor's race coming up. And on top of that, you also have a Senate race coming up. And the Senate race, the Democrats, the front runner for that race is somebody who's a carpetbagger with an unlikable personality. That's not going to bode too well, by the way. It never really has. It never really does, especially if you put up somebody generic. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody who can just do enough work, has enough of a name to go out there and win. But on the governor's side, they have a bunch of people who are considering running on the Democrat side, but they're going to have to face an independent candidate in Mike Duggan, who is relatively popular. I don't know how many votes he's going to get. It's possible that he could make it a competitive three-way race, or possibly could fall behind as many third-party candidates do as more time goes on. Maybe he could win. I don't know. It would be better than a Democrat, despite having some issues of his own. But then you have the fact that it's a three-way race where you will have Duggan most likely eat into the Democrat margin more so than the Republican margin, just based on where he's from. He's the mayor of Detroit, 80% plus Democrat city. Not only that, the Detroit suburbs know him well. Many of those are left-leaning, although you do have Macomb County, which is very right-leaning and a very like MAGA type, or even just like a palatable type that's vaguely MAGA-friendly, could go out there and do well in that governor's race. So I don't exactly know how this is going to shake out. I don't know if Buttigieg is going to run for it, but the shoe's on the other foot. Democrats are the ones that are having candidate quality issues. This is talked about in 2022 with the Republicans. They couldn't find anybody to run in Georgia for the Senate race besides Herschel Walker, who didn't do so well. Pennsylvania, for both the Senate primary and the governor's primary, there really wasn't a very strong candidate available. And I think McCormick, had he got the nomination, probably wouldn't have won. I think he was much better facing Casey than he possibly could have been facing Fetterman in that environment. So regardless, the bottom line is the Democrats are having issues with campaign or with candidate quality ahead of 2026. They have the, I guess you would say, high propensity turnout factor on their side. That's true. It's very early on. We're not even to Virginia. We're not even to New Jersey yet. We still have the Wisconsin Supreme Court race that's going to be coming up in April. That's a very huge race. But I don't think it's too early to talk about 2026, as this year's going to determine, who's going to run for what office. A lot of candidate recruitment goes on in the off year, which is 2025 this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Democrats, again, they're a weak party. They used to be competent. But the old competent guard of the Democrats that was even around like 10 years ago, they're retiring. They're fading by the day. And then you have these crazy people taking over. People like the new chair, who's best friends with Tampon Tim Walz up in Minnesota. And on top of that, you have David Hogg, as the vice chair, one of the three vice chairs. And the other two are just crazy people as well, even crazier, you could even argue, than David Hogg, but pretty much about the same. It's hard to go lower, same tier, I guess you would say, but that's the level of people. Somebody who said verbatim, I'm too radical for mainstream politics, I'm too poisonous. That same guy is now tied for second in line in the Democrat Party as we speak in 2025. These people, you don't want to interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, but I will say it's motivation for 2026. Could it be an asterisk midterm? Well, I feel like if anybody can buck a historical trend, it's Donald Trump, and he's in the White House. It's his last hurrah, possibly last 2 years to cement his legacy before the torch gets passed, obviously at some point. Now, he was asked a question about that in one of the interviews, the Super Bowl interview, I believe it was, asked about if he sees J.D. Vance as his successor, and a lot of people were trying to use this against Vance or something because, Trump said, no, it's too early, he's very capable, but we have a lot of work to do, and he's done a very good job so far. You had a lot of people that for some reason they took that to mean, Trump doesn't actually like Vance, he's not the successor. It's like, come on. endorsements for the ensuing presidential primary, yeah, you're going to have to wait on that. Vance is obviously the front runner. It's 90% positive going to be Vance, but you got 4 years. You don't need to be tossing around endorsements right now. But it's clear that Vance is going to be the successor. I don't know who in a primary could run and hold a candle. A lot of people have mentioned Don Jr., because he bears the Trump name, but at the same time, Don Jr. begged Donald Trump to make Vance VP in part so Vance could be that successor, and Don Jr.'s friends with Vance. So, is Don Jr. going to run for any political office in the future? I don't know. Maybe he'll run for Senate in Pennsylvania. Maybe he could be the one to take on Fetterman. He's got the Trump name, could juice a lot of turnout just because of that. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to run for president in 2028, maybe sometime down the line, but we're not quite there yet. But either way, I wanted to address that. But the final thing before Super Chats we have to address is the Gulf of America. It is real. This is Apple Maps. It's on Google Maps, and it's hilarious. It's just hilarious. We finally have changed a body of water. A lot of people on the left are melting down over this, but here's the difference. You have people on the left that for years they changed names of sports teams and changing statues, names of schools, names of buildings, street names, because certain people they view as unsavory. But the bottom line is that they've done that. It's not popular. Wokeness is over. You need a little bit of an overcorrection. It's like, yeah, well, you can get the Gulf of Mexico back when we get the Redskins back. Until that day comes, yeah, it's the Gulf of America. And even after that day, it should still be the Gulf of America, because most of the shoreline is a part of the United States. It just makes sense whatsoever. If you want to say if it's like off the coast of Mexico, divide it in half, call it the Gulf of Mexico, whatever. But I just think it's funny because it trolls the left. If I was president, I wouldn't have thought of doing this, but it's funny. It is hilarious. So we will be getting to the Super Chats as we speak. We have plenty of them, and we're going to be getting to all of them right now. So as they load, we have plenty of them. So here we go. Johnny Hartdog says, who does the left hate more now, Trump or Musk? Well, they hate Trump, and Musk is an auxiliary of that, and they hate that he's enacting Donald Trump's agenda. They're calling him a fascist because he wants to shrink the size of government. Doesn't really seem to add up there, but what can I say? Also, Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, I remember in 2014 and earlier, the left loved Trump. Now they hate him. In 2020 and earlier, the left loved Musk. Now they hate him. The left are a bunch of snakes who will turn on you in an instant. Well, it's because they don't follow the same agenda. When they followed the agenda, they were not a threat to the regime. They were not a threat to the system. Elon Musk is actually taking a hammer to the system. I don't agree with the guy on everything. He's not like a very, he's not very conservative. He didn't vote Republican in his life, I believe, until like a race in 2022. And he didn't even endorse Trump until July of 2024. So clearly he's had a transformation. I hope he continues. And he's done a pretty good job, and he's going to have to continue doing a good job. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, do you think that the majority, supermajority, are now aware of the amount of waste that's been exposed, or is it only the right who are getting the info because the mainstream won't cover? Well, obviously, it's going to be harder to get the correct information when you have such a media narrative, but I think a lot of people are at a point where they're seeing past it. They consume enough alternative media where they're actually getting the data. They're actually getting the facts down right. And overall, I think a lot of people are waking up. Obviously, it's not like everybody is going to be on board, because you have a lot of people who are just going to follow the narrative. They're on the left. They see, oh, well, the left doesn't like this. And then they'll twist the argument to something else. But it's just hard to really effectively target this Doge stuff. If you're on the left, it's really hard to paint it with a bad brush. It's hard to paint a bad picture of it, because what it's doing is it's just auditing all the fraud in government. People are like, well, they have access to people's information. Well, so does the government. They're the ones trying to make sure the government's doing their job properly. I don't think that really anybody who's whining about that cares. In terms of stuff like the Patriot Act and other potential government overreaches. No, they don't have anything to say about that. Remember, people were calling the police on people in their own homes during COVID for gathering for dinner. I mean, these are the same people. They don't care about that kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with privacy. It has nothing to do with privacy or privacy concerns. It has to do with covering up their own corruption, because that's how these people make money. They launder it to these liberal causes, and that's only one department. Now, some other departments might not be as bad, but there's going to be a lot of waste you need to cut. You need to audit the entire government. That's what they're doing. Of course, they don't want to audit the government because they understand what it means for them. They do. Johnny Hartdog for 5 says, also, do you think that Kamala voters are seeing how the left is acting and waking up, and will this help us in the House come the midterms? I don't know if these Harris voters are really all going to wake up anytime soon, but I will say that the more that Trump becomes popular, he's probably winning over some of them who might have been a little bit scared, maybe on the fence, maybe they're just not ready. Maybe next election they'd finally vote Republican. There's a few people that come to mind that I guess could fit in that category. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I mean, he might win some, but the 2026 midterms are so disorganized. It's going to be a different thing going on in Michigan than Wisconsin and all these different states. We saw that in 2022. We need to make sure that we win by turning out voters. There's almost 80 million people that voted for Trump in this country. You need to get those people out to the polls, because you know damn well the Democrats aren't going to get out any more than probably like 60 some million in a midterm year. So you got to make sure you beat them. I think they can if they do their job properly. It starts now. We can walk and chew gum at the same time, cover Trump's administration and also cover the ensuing elections, which are going to be very interesting, despite, the Senate map being boring. Even the House map, it's going to come down to maybe 20 districts in the entire nation. It's going to be interesting, but the governorships are another thing. But I don't know. We'll have a lot to cover with that. Johnny Hartdog for 10 says, I said this on the last stream, but my one complaint about the deportations is they need to up it. I'm sure you agree. Is it a funding issue? ICE slacking? What do you think? Well, it's definitely a funding issue, but on top of it, it's also true that you have ICE and a lot of these people in government, these bad faith actors, these holdovers. What they're doing is they're tipping people off in places like Chicago and other places about the raids, and it's also prevented the number. Now, that's not the main cause. The main cause is funding, but you have a lot of people that are obstructing it as well. And we need to make sure that stops. So also Johnny Hartdog for 5 says, one more thing. Do you think Cash will be confirmed this week? I'm sick of this crap. Come on, let's get going. Yeah, I think he will be. I think he easily would be. It seems like there's not going to be much opposition from Collins or even Murkowski for RFK and even for Tulsi Gabbard. So it seems like Trump is going to get his whole cabinet confirmed. Mitch McConnell seems to be the one that probably is going to be voting against. So I don't know. We'll see. But Incel Speedrun for 10 says, thoughts on, I believe you're talking about Rumble, the video platform. It's pro 1A, but focuses too hard on GOP content. I'm tired of Russell harping on the coup for the millionth time. Need to focus on topics other than a dead horse from 2020. Well, I upload to Rumble. I don't really have a problem with it, but it is true. You say what you will about the mainstream social media platforms. They're objectively better and more user-friendly than the alt media platforms. Now, Rumble is a good one. I upload on there, but I guess you just got to look for the content. There's all kinds of content on there. If they're promoting stuff like COVID or those other issues, maybe they need to update their algorithm. I don't know how that works. So Johnny Hartdog for 5 says, I think McKinley should be Denali and Rayner in Washington should be Tahoma. Washingtonians would understand because they're both the original names. They are the original names. My problem with Denali is that they specifically, for political correctness, removed the Mount McKinley name from it because, William McKinley, this, that, and the other thing. They didn't like him. They found something wrong with him in his past they didn't like, and then they just used it to strip his name from the mountain. And I'm glad they're returning it back to the original name. I will say that. I'm glad they're going back to McKinley because that's what I grew up with. If people in the region want to call it Denali, then they can. I just think that both names should apply. You can use them interchangeably, but keep in mind that they changed it for like the rest of us in the lower 48 plus Hawaii. It was always seen as McKinley for decades, and then it became Denali. And, it's just like, they can have it, the local name, they can preserve that. That's fine. Not going to hate on it. But for the rest of us, it's clear. It's clear that Mount McKinley's the right name. I was far more happy about that than the Gulf of America thing. That thing I think is just funny. And also I think they're trying to rename back Fort Bragg and all these other names that they changed for political correctness. It just amazing to see the tide turn in the other direction. We hit peak wokeness. The left is still melting down like crazy, but the tide is turning, and culturally, we're winning. Already, culturally, this administration in, 3 weeks, a little bit more than 3 weeks, 3 weeks and a day, has done more culturally beneficial things for this country than I think any administration in probably a very, very long time has. So we have a long way to go. But Trump out of the gate, even with just the executive orders and just, he honestly, you could even make a case, the whole Gulf of America thing is just him to push people around, see if he can get Google to change a name on a map, see if he could get Apple to do it. I don't know. I'm sure that if a Democrat gets elected in 2028, they're going to try to change it right back. But I don't know. Maybe that'll just be one of those things that determines who's in power. It's Cool Guy Rye says the way we get election integrity is to have live election results by precinct. It can be done. These election officials just need to do their jobs. I agreed, but I will say that I don't know if it'd be cool or a little bit too much if you had like an interactive precinct map where you let's say you're looking at Michigan and then you click on Wayne County specifically. So you click on Michigan, you get the county, you see where they are, and then you see the votes where they come in the individual precincts. It's very complicated and complex on election night. It could be useful. I think in a place like Arizona, that'd be really useful because the counties are very big and there's red parts to places like Pima and blue parts to places like Maricopa, which is now back where it belongs in the Republican column, although with a very different coalition than it was back in 2012, 2016 even. But yeah, I agree. That would be a way we would have more election integrity because then you would see where the precincts are outstanding, where the votes are. It'd be very good. It'd be a very good thing. Christopher Laurie for 10 says it's funny the establishment is melting down over tariffs. Our country got too comfortable with globalist free trade. Make America protectionist again. Well, I think we're getting there because every time there's a meltdown, you look at where they pull tariffs and it's almost always like 50-50. And Donald Trump understands this. He mainly uses tariffs to get other countries to come to the table to make sure that we can benefit more off of them. And, it's true. The tariffs, there was a study that would have cost us $15 more per week on average if Trump left the tariffs in with Canada and Mexico. But they would have utterly decimated the economies of Canada and Mexico compared to ours. And the inflation that we would have to suffer from it on select goods would be nowhere near what we've dealt with over the past 4 years with the Biden inflation. And there's also a reward you get out of it. And it's usually just a trace amount of income, $15 a week. It's not a ridiculous amount. It might be if you're in the lower income brackets, but the wages over time would go up because of it. And you'd have more companies investing in America, making jobs as well, which would help out. There's plenty moving parts to it, but there's a method to the madness with what Donald Trump does. And especially when you have a strong leader who knows how to use the tariffs properly, it's not just the concept of tariffs as a policy, it's how is he using them. It's important. Donald Trump's foreign policy. There have been candidates that have ran for political office that technically have a better on-paper foreign policy than you could say Donald Trump. However, they don't have the same personality and bravado and negotiation skills to pull it off the way Trump does. That's why the whole Trumpism without Trump, it's not entirely a viable thing. Obviously, Trumpism and pillars of it will basically, it's embedded within the GOP. It's only going to get more embedded in the GOP. But candidates that do run in the future, their personality, they're going to have something else going on, but doesn't mean that they can't be strong in their own rights. But Donald Trump with his foreign policy, he's very unique because he's just Trump. He always knows how to win on the world stage, and he always does it. He always does it. So Chase M says, how confident are you that RFK, Tulsi, and Cash will be confirmed, and how are you feeling about the congressional special elections? I like Randy Fine a lot. Well, I think that RFK, Tulsi, and Cash will all get confirmed. Probably 90% sure on all three of them. Cash probably close to 100. As for the special elections, we'll see what happens in them. I mean, it's obviously they're going to go red because they're in Florida, where you have a competent state party that knows how to turn people out, and also they're very, very red districts. So definitely getting those seats is going to be huge to having more of a cushion in Congress to fill up some of these vacancies. Alex Sorikos for 10 says, I watched Sicko by Michael Moore recently, and it got me thinking, why should Gitmo inmates get free health care while we pay thousands for care? Meanwhile, in Europe, people get unlimited time off for cancer. Well, there's differences in the systems. I mean, you're going to have to overhaul our system. Basically, the reason why inmates get free health care is because they live off the government. And it's like the government's duty, even if these people are criminals, that if they have to, go somewhere, they're going to have to deal with it. So I don't know how exactly it works, why that is. I think we need reform in the healthcare system. I don't think that means that we're going to have a European-style single-payer healthcare. And I touched base on this in the last stream. You're seeing all the fraud and waste within our government. That's going to have to be gutted completely before you talk about what can we do to have efficient government assistance in our healthcare department that is going to make it better, because it is true that we have a broken system. I think you got to clean out these places first before you can start talking about that. But J.R. Williams for 2 says percent something voter ID will pass or be in reconciliation. Percent chance about a national voter ID. I'm not sure if they're going to try. They should. I mean, they should put it somewhere in a bill, in one of those big spending bills. The left puts everything in there. Why not have us actually go out there and make sure that we can get a win as well? So Johnny Hartdog for 2 says, I think you look better without the beard. I disagree, but I do shave it probably once a month at this point, just so it grows in a little bit thicker, which is why I am relatively clean shaven today. So it'll grow back. Probably in about a week, you'll be able to tell that it's making some progress. Red Whale Politics for 1. Ravino for 2 Australian dollars says, hello from Australia. Lots of Aussies watch you. I'm aware. I mean, we have a lot of people from over 100 some countries across the globe. So Timbo Slice says, hey, Rep, thoughts on New Jersey's governor race? I'm voting for Bill Spadea. He's been a huge Trump guy since day one and is very critical about corruption in the state. I don't know. I haven't looked at the nomination polls in a while, so I haven't really seen it. But it's definitely flippable. It's flippable. I don't know if Spadea is going to be the candidate, but it is flippable, I believe. Ash K2 for 5 says, I wish Trump would stop antagonizing Canada. It's causing the Liberals to surge. Because of Trump, Canada may never get a conservative prime minister. Well, that's their problem. I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, if I was a Canadian, maybe I'd care. But, Canada having a conservative prime minister would be preferable. But still, if they want to shoot their country in their foot to own Blumph, I'm not gonna really care about it. I'm not gonna cry over it. I think it's amusing, but I will say that it is true that if you have two countries with stronger leaders that are always clashing, trying to take advantage of each other, it's not gonna work out too well if you have somebody that you could otherwise just dog walk like Trudeau. And part of the reason why the Liberals are surging is mainly because Trudeau stepped away. Obviously, the Trump stuff is kind of helping the Liberals a little bit more too, but most of that surge has not been because of Trump. It's been because, they replaced Trudeau. Basically the same thing we saw here when they replaced Biden, except that surge was all astroturfed and fake. And it's funny because if you look at the polls on July 21st, 2024, between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, Donald Trump led those polls by 2.1%. He led the Biden polls head-to-head by 3.1%. So if you look at that, it's like, okay, so what did Trump only win by like 1.5 in the popular vote, 1.6? So it was pretty much close to the accurate poll. So the only surge Harris really got, if you want to do the math, was a 0.5% surge in the popular vote. Not really all that good enough to win, but what can I say? What can I say? But I don't know if that's going to be sustainable. I know Canada, they have a while to go before their election. Eric from Wisconsin says, all of my Wisconsin people, get out in the spring and vote for Brad Shamel. We need the Wisconsin Supreme Court back. This is true. The most consequential election until November will be taking place this April in Wisconsin. And if people can, want to go volunteer up there, recommend it. If you're in the area, you're close by, because taking back that Supreme Court seat would be absolutely huge. And Republicans are running a strong candidate, but they need money, they need resources, they need people turning voters out there. And if they're able to do that, and Democrats take an electoral blow in a special election, yeah, it'd be pretty entertaining. That would be the way you'd want to go into 2022. So let's see, we're 12 yellow super chats and above, by the way, from hitting our goal. So if you guys want to help us hit our goal for the stream, send in a yellow or above super chat. But let's see. Rich says Dems are dumb. They don't have a candidate or a messaging issues. They have an ideology issue. They're on pace to lose 2026, right? Well, I agree with the fact that they have an ideology issue, but they also have a candidate issue. They also have a messaging issue. It is true the message is garbage, and that's true. The policies are garbage. Everybody can tell. But the fact is that the people that they're promoting have been clowns. They've been not real people and just jokes of people. You have Kamala Harris, who's as awful as she is, and then Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, as her runner-up. And then you see 2028, their field. Like, who exactly are they going to run? Newsom? They're going to run it back with Harris again? You think they're going to do that? Obviously, it's not going to be somebody like a Bashir or a Josh Shapiro, both of whom are vastly overrated. Bashir more so than Shapiro, but Shapiro's not all that to begin with. We'll see if he even wins by 10 next November. But like, who do they have? Wes Moore? Is that their best candidate? Are they going to run Mark Cuban? Are they really going to try to go down that road, which they might try? They might try to run some celebrity-style candidate. That might be their best bet for them. Not saying it would pan out or win, but somebody with less baggage in like this, weird group in our government on the left. They've just basically embraced the worst policy positions possible. It's going to hurt them no matter what in any future election. So I think they do have a candidate issue, and I do think they have a palatability issue, and that plays into their ideology. I don't think every single policy that they happen to espouse is going to be polling in the negatives, but some of the messaging on it is a little bit of an issue, especially in regards to men. But I don't think they can really recover, because if they do go down that road and try to root out the woke, they're just going to alienate a lot of their own people. So they're not really, they're in a zero-sum game right now, and they're losing the game. But I will say that for a midterm year, it's also true, different coalitions turn out in different rates. Anyone expecting a red wave, hate to tell you, it's not likely going to happen. But anybody that's going to be out there saying, "Oh, Democrats are going to flip the Senate," they're even more just out of their minds, I guess I would say. So, Red Whale Politics for 10 says, "I've never seen a party dig a hole so deep and continue to dig. I really do think in a way Dems are kind of doomed in 28 because the old guard, they don't have any more pull in the DNC anymore." And they don't. They've lost the plot. The inmates are running the prison. And I guess the last hurrah they did was, we'll replace Biden. But even then, they didn't replace him with somebody that was a good candidate. They replaced him with probably the only person who couldn't try at all to distance themselves from the administration at hand. And how exactly did that play out? Not too well. So 2028, who knows what's going to happen? But 2024, we're already seeing it unfold in the aftermath. The just autopsy report. It's not there. They don't learn. They don't learn. And in terms of 2028, there are some questions. How's the economy doing? Do people see any sort of improvement in the economy? It doesn't have to be an economic miracle, but are they seeing any improvement? Is the view of the economy better than it was before Trump took office? That's one of them. Because if not, the Democrats are going to have more policy to run on, and they could pivot. Number two, is Trump popular? He doesn't have to have an approval rating of 55, but if it's like, so long as it's like 46, 47 at a minimum, then it turns out that a lot of people are probably going to want to continue his presidency in some form, even if they don't like him personally. Maybe they'll see Vance in a positive. Maybe some of those like people who don't like Trump's personality could see Vance in a positive light. I don't know. But the bottom line is it would have to be somewhere in the high 40s. And then will Vance beat said candidate in North Carolina and Pennsylvania? And if they can do that, then they don't even need Georgia, given the way that Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Florida, all those states are going in the registrations. Vance is going to win in 2028. So we got a long way to go before we get there. But I really think that the answer to all three of those questions is probably going to be yes. Probably. Timbo Slice for 10 says, Spadea pronounced Spadia. Also, binge watching election night reactions. Remember when Dems said Moreno was the weakest candidate for Ohio? I wonder if anyone kept receipts and went back to those vids. Well, I never understood why that putting Matt Dolan at the top of the ticket would do much better. Maybe for fundraising purposes, but again, the guy, you talk about crossover voting. If you were going to beat Sherrod Brown, you got to pick somebody who's aligned with Trump enough to prevent crossover voting, because you're not going to have Democrats or people voting for Harris and then a Republican down ballot. There's not a lot of that demographic in a place like Ohio anyways that would really carry that candidate over the finish line. So Moreno, his campaign didn't really begin until September. They didn't need to, but he had $100 million. I mean, Brown had, I believe, more, but Republicans went out there, won it. I always thought they were shooting themselves in the foot by promoting Moreno in the primary, but Moreno probably would have won the primary without any Democrat infiltration or interference. So regardless, I think that it panned out very well. We have a couple troll super chats. Thank you, Olivia Williams, for those two. I'm not going to read them out loud, but appreciate the super chats. Also, Temporal Forces for 10 says, hey, Rep, I agree the supposed liberal surge in Canada is a fluke like Kamala's surge was. If you remove or even keep the bias polls in the aggregate, the Conservatives are projected to win. That's technically true. They're still ahead. Also, Quantum Football for 10 says, do you think the 2026 Ohio governor's race will be won by Vivek, Jim Tressel, or somebody else? I have no idea. I don't know if Vivek's going to go for it. If he goes for it, do I think he could win the general? I mean, yeah, but I do think that there's potential red flags in his candidacy or his profile as a candidate that people just aren't really looking at. He's a very smooth talker, very intelligent, but a lot of the questions he answers are just, in a way, he'll dodge it very effectively. He says a lot of nothing. It's a lot of nothing, but it sounds like he's talking a lot. I have mixed feelings on the guy. I've always had from when he first announced his run. There's areas that I agree with him 100%. Think he has some interesting ideas. There's plenty of other things he said on immigration, trade in particular, but mainly immigration in terms of what he said recently that I think is just incompatible with the way that I view things. So it's a coalition. He's a part of it. I don't even know if Trump is going to endorse him. There's rumors does Trump like him? Some people say Trump likes him. Some people say Trump doesn't like him. I don't know what the answer really is. But I know Yost is running. I know Vivek is running. I think Jim Tressel is like the lieutenant governor for some reason, the former coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes football team back in the day. That Jim Tressel, because DeWine put his Lieutenant Governor Husted in the Senate. He appointed him and then replaced him with Jim Tressel. So I don't know if Tressel would stay on, but I don't think they have a separate lieutenant governor's election in the state of Ohio. So Eris Walker says, do you ever watch your old videos in retrospect? Yeah, I've seen, I go back occasionally and I watch some. And mainly for the 2024 election, it's like everything I said was just 100% true. Like every little detail. I'm not just talking about the states. I'm talking about, this part of this state going this way, this part of this state going this way. It turned out to be very, very spot on content in 2024. Hopefully we can continue. Art Trujillo says, thoughts on the crypto reserve? I don't do crypto. I don't deal with that. Olivia Williams says, why were there tampons at the men's room at Meta? I have no idea. It's not surprising. I mean, these woke corporations in California, they have these lunacy, these insane policies. That's the world they live in. So it is true that Meta's, made some good moves lately. I don't really trust the platform, but I'll take the wins. In terms of less censorship, not no censorship, but less censorship, it seems, and they're admitting that they colluded with the government to censor, so at least that they've been willing to admit their mistake. Not like it's something we should just brush off, but they haven't really changed their corporate culture, I'm sure. So Chase M says, what's your 2026 Senate prediction? I might do that at some point. I think I did one back in, December? Sometime this month, maybe when I'm going to, I'll be at CPAC later this month, so I'll probably pre-record some videos there that are, obviously have a lifespan longer than like a day or two in terms of like not being current events and things. So probably sometime later this month. I haven't fully done like the full prediction, just laying it out. We have ways to go. North Carolina, we don't know who the Democrats are going to run. Michigan, if Buttigieg is the nominee, I don't think Buttigieg is winning. It would take a sizable wave in my book, especially because it's an open seat and Republicans are seemingly going to run some candidate that's not like Tudor Dixon level controversial. So Red Whale Politics for 10 says, Democrats in 1840 were asking who would pick my crops and make my lunch. White people aren't going to do that work. Democrats in 2025 are saying we need our illegals to pick our fruit and cut my lawn. Times never change. Yeah, why don't they mow their own damn lawn? That's first of all, that's an important question. They'll never answer it because these are lazy people we're dealing with. But yeah, no, it's true. It is true. It's the same argument. They said, slavery, the economy is going to crash without slavery. And they made the argument then, and then they're making the argument now. It's like, without slaves, who's going to pick the crops? So without illegals, who's going to pick the crops? It's like, look, even if there's a short-term, I guess you would say, a shortage, it's worth it to make sure we actually have national sovereignty. Let's be completely honest. The worst case scenario is people are going to have to be paid more to do that work. It's not like people aren't willing to pick strawberries. By the way, a majority of which are legal workers. It's not like these are like all illegals that are doing the job. But it's like if people were paid enough to do that, then they would go do it. But it's frauding the system. The same thing that China does with their currency. Oh, they're paying people under the table because they're willing to work for those wages. The Democrats have talked about income inequality for years. They've talked about the lack of income mobility for years. They've never actually looked at the real root causes of the problem. It hasn't been tax cuts. It's been globalism and globalization. In fact, you've seen it in almost every other country in the world, even countries that raise taxes on the wealthy. They're still seeing low rates or lower rates of income mobility. And they're also seeing higher levels of income inequality. That's a major problem. So, John Waffle, H2 pieces, who can successfully... Well, it doesn't matter. You can't primary out Murkowski unless you change the election system. Now, I don't know which candidate is going to run for Alaska's Senate race in 28, but you got to make sure you can overturn the corrupt BS known as RCV, ranked choice voting. Get rid of that in 2026. Actually try this time, unlike 2024. Put money behind it. Get it done so you can get a real senator in Alaska. Make her face a primary. She'll lose a primary. Pass a sore loser law where she can't run as an independent write-in, whatever. I don't think she'd be able to win as a write-in in this current day. She had to confuse people to win. She had to lobby to change the laws, change the election system so she could stay in power. It's all about herself. That's what it is. It's a disgrace. We need massive changes in the Republican Party still. But getting rid of her would be huge. Collins, I can keep. I can deal with Collins because it's Maine. But Murkowski, you know, you're from a red state. You're voting like you're a Democrat in a deep blue state. That's the problem. In many occasions. In many occasions. All right, we are at 11 out of 20. I don't know if we're gonna hit that goal, but John Waffle says, can Elon help with his money in terms of primarying people? Yeah, I mean, he definitely should. He's floated the idea. It's been rumored he's going to like start a PAC. Well, he already has a PAC, but he should use that money in certain primaries, absolutely. And I'm talking mainly about these deep red states because we've spent a lot of time on like swing states and we get decent people in there, and in many cases they don't do all that well because the establishment will stab them in the back because they will throw them under the bus. They will make sure they lose. But a lot of candidates that we could be running in like deep red states, that's where a lot of the rhinos are. A lot of the rhinos are not in Michigan or Wisconsin. A lot of the rhinos are in Utah. They're in Alaska. They're in states like the Dakotas. Like those states, there's no business to be having these weak people. They don't share the values of the base. They vote against the interests of the base. They're in bed with the corporations because you have a lot of people that have just bought up these Senate seats. The same donors that fund the Democrats in the presidential election, they fund the Republicans in the primaries that are going to be weaker so they can serve as that controlled opposition. People like Roger Wicker taking money from George Soros. I wonder why that is. Republican from Mississippi. He may not be a full-on rhino like a Murkowski. He might vote party line most of the time. But the problem is that you have this guy in there that is clearly not, he answers to the donors more so than not. The brand of the Republican Party, it's changed a lot since Trump has taken office. If people think that things are bad because there's rhinos in the Senate, which there are, look how many rhinos were there that are not there anymore when Trump first came into office. So there's that. Red Whale Politics says, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe legal immigrants can get an agricultural program where they work with union and labor protection laws with decent pay, so the Democrat arguments fall flat. Yeah, and a lot of those people, they're temporary. If we have a shortage, you could have temporary workers. If you truly can't fill them with Americans, they could come in, they could do the work, and then they could go home. And that's the way it goes. So the entire immigration system needs overhaul, for sure. And it can be done so in a way that benefits us. Base Cat for with a 53-month member chat says Dems are indeed in complete shambles as they see their woke world crumbling and all they can do is cope about egg prices and Elon president. So two things that are not true. That's what they're coping. They're coping because eggs that were on the shelves in the Biden administration cost a lot of money. Well, I wonder whose fault that was. I really wonder whose fault. If you're going to assume that the blame falls on a president, it's not going to be on the guy who was president for not even 4 weeks. It's going to be on the guy who was president for 4 years. But they don't want to do that because Blump's bad. And they're the minority opinion. Trump went to the Super Bowl. He was cheered. Taylor Swift was booed. Their hero. She's a liberal musical artist. They said she's going to use her influence to win them the election. Yeah, that didn't work out too well. How many times did we hear that argument? Yeah, doesn't work that way. So, all right, we've been live for about an hour. We're not going to hit the goal, but I still might do a stream on Thursday anyways, which is fine. We'll hit the goal next stream if that's true. We could do it again. But we're going to be wrapping it up. So this will be the last call for super chats. In about a few minutes, we'll wrap up the stream. But we've had a good one tonight so far. So, but it is true. What is the direction of the Democrat Party? Where do they go from here? Like, that's an important question that we're going to have to analyze. Because the Republican Party is just correcting itself as time goes on. We're kind of seeing that. Trump coming back, easily winning the nomination, winning the popular vote, shows where the center of gravity in the party is. It's a mandate, not just as a national mandate for Trump to get things done, but also a mandate within where the party truly stands and what the party truly represents. J.R. Williams says, do you think Trump will ignore the woke judges to save the country? It seems like MAGA can't realize if he acquiesces and waits for appeal. Yeah, I think he's going to have to appeal the cases, and he should ignore the judges in the process because the other administration had no problem doing that, by the way. John Waffle says, Trump needs to go after the Mormon church. They run the state of Utah. Well, he's going to lose a lot of Mormon support for the Republicans in Arizona if he does that. So I don't know if that's what he would do. Utah is just a broken state. I mean, how they have Mike Lee as a senator there, just looking at the state of the Utah Republicans is beyond me. But it's not just the Mormons in Utah that are liberal. It's also the non-Mormons. It's not even that they're liberal. They're just like neocons. Old guard, never Trump Republicans. Although it's the Republican Party brand has changed. The down ballot Republicans aren't doing all that well in Utah either, which is probably a good thing. Mac Baby for two says, I hear the assassination files is Shapiro related. For Josh Shapiro. In terms of the butler, somebody made that complaint. It doesn't really mean anything until it's like fully investigated. So probably not. But they do need to open up the, what's it called? And you open up a formal investigation into the assassination, or actually do a deep dive on it. Trump said he would have a presidential commission on investigating presidential assassinations. He announced that at the rally where RFK Jr. endorsed him for the first time back in August. So hopefully he follows through on that. But again, it's 3 weeks. Can't do everything in one day. We've gotten a lot done. Definitely want to keep tabs and make sure you're checking off more of that checklist if you are Trump and the people around him. And I believe they are, which is why they've been complaining about these deportation numbers not being where they need to be, because they're not where they need to be. They need to be a lot higher. So, All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Make sure you guys like the stream down below. Let's get to 500, at least on the replay. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another stream. Subscribe as well. If you're new, make sure you're subscribed. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out.